everybody.
Hi.
We've had a few tries at this already today. We've had some technical issues. I'm just going to blow through this for a bit. Megan is sick. So's her baby. It's the first time he's sick, but they're all doing okay. Megan's drinking tea. They're using essential oils, everything. It's fine. Everybody's fine. It's going to be okay.
Can you tell Hannah's over our intro?
And now we want to talk about last week's episode because it was so great and we're so in love with it. So that's what we're going to be doing today.
What'd you like about it?
Everything. Well, first off, I just love talking to your mom about anything because I like her energy and she knows so many things. She's so well versed in so many things. And then especially this, because I'm so interested in it. And she's such an expert in it and has so much experience and fun examples that make it easier to understand the concept. I like examples a lot when I'm trying to understand a concept. I love examples. And since she's using it in real life every day, she has so many examples. So it's really fun for me to talk to her about it.
Same to all of that. Ditto.
If you listen to all our episodes, you know that there was an episode recently that we recorded and then I wasn't comfortable with it and we deleted it and we're going to do it again at some point. This is what we were going to talk about. And that's another reason why I'm so glad that we talked to your mom about it.
Yeah.
Because I had a hard time explaining the concept and like I'm not good at giving definitions. That's just not good at it. So I like that now we have that to reference and we had an expert on it.
Yeah, emotion coaching is and that whole realm of like respectful care and awareness and seeing the person and separating your feelings from their feelings and that whole like process, right? It's a huge beast. And
yeah,
I think we talked our way around it pretty well, or she explained it to us all pretty well, and the examples really help with that because it's such an emotionally charged and emotionally led and driven thing that when it comes down to like the brass tacks of practicality of doing emotion coaching and going through it on a daily basis, all of that comes into play, but it's not actually what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah.
And so seeing what that looks like in an actual interaction with the child. And I know a lot of people that do training and teaching around that sort of thing give scripts, but obviously those don't apply to every situation. So hearing a bunch of different situations where it can apply is really helpful in understanding how to implement the goals and how to implement all of the emotional awareness that we're trying to integrate into it.
Yeah. It's not intuitive, right? Because most of us were not raised that way. It's not intuitive to us. So, and I think most people probably think it's weird to use a script like to even say that word script in the context of talking about dealing with children, child education seems wrong. I don't know. It seems weird.
Yeah.
But it's because we don't know any different. We were raised differently, so it's not intuitive. So we need to practice.
Because you have to reteach your instincts how to do it.
Yes, thank you.
You have to retrain you have to coach yourself, retrain your...
Like rewire your brain. You have to build new, what's the English word? Synapses, thank you. Which is the case for anything that we learn, right? Anything that's new to us. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think, probably in this context, a little more heightened, a little more...
Well, yeah, and also remembering that you're not dealing with an adult, that they're not reasonable, and that their big feeling around this thing that you consider inconsequential can still be valid and legitimate and okay, even though it's not an important thing objectively or like in the wider adult context. Like my son gets so upset when we close the door right? Like it doesn't matter if someone's coming or going, doesn't matter if we opened it to put out the trash or to let in the breeze or to check if it was raining. It doesn't matter if someone's leaving. He just is upset that we closed the door. So obviously that's not something that's worth getting upset about, quote unquote, right? But to him, it's an upsetting thing. And so recognizing that that emotion deserves just as much attention and care as like when he falls down and scrapes his knee or hits his head, like that those two emotions are not worth different amounts just because one of them seems logical and the other one doesn't.
They're just as valid. And to him, they are
just as meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the rewiring and that's part of the scripts too, that are training ourselves that our reaction to emotion isn't necessarily based on the context first. It's based on the emotion first. And then the context comes into it in step 2 or 3.
Yeah. I like that a lot, what you just said. I don't think I had looked at it that way before, like phrased it that way. I like that.
Cool. Thanks. There's so much, you're just confronted with it all day long, every day.
Yeah. And I've actually started to, like, I don't have a child, but I use this in my everyday life with adults, with myself and with adults. So obviously not exactly the same. Like I don't use like the script that way because I am usually dealing with a person that has a developed frontal lobe. But it's been really helpful to me to take this standpoint of and remind myself all emotions are valid.
Yeah.
To train myself to not judge myself or anyone else for their emotion and not go automatically to the logical, like, well, that's not something you should get upset about. Like, no, it's just, okay, they're feeling that way.
Yeah.
All right. How can I, if they want me to, how can I support them in that? Mm-hmm. And I even do, so to a certain extent, sometimes use scripts. So like I might, depending on the situation, right? I might say, I can see that you're upset, just so the person feels seen and validated. Because so often,
this is something we all need.
Yeah. We're so quick to be like, oh, that's like, don't cry. You don't need to be upset about this. Or like brush it off. Like you're overreacting.
Because we're trying to help, right? We're trying to move past the discomfort. We're trying to move past the part where it's bad and into the part where we feel good again, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing we try to do to children.
Uh-huh. There's so many things in there, what you just said.
Go for it.
One thing, we're so goal-oriented and like in a rush. You said we want to move on. We want to... Then you said something about... I already forgot.
The part where it's bad and the part where it's good?
Yes, bad and good. That is also a big part for me. To not label, judge the emotion. That's also something your mom said, and I think we repeat it quite a few times in the episode. All emotions are valid. They are all okay. I've been trying to do a lot of that, to not put them in categories anymore. One of them is good and one of them is bad. And the goal, you said the goal is to get to happy again. I've been trying to get rid of that too. Like, no, it's all life. All of this has a purpose. Let's feel it all.
Yeah, it's all life. I like that. Because if we want to get past, we're just skipping over parts of our life, right? We're just skipping over the parts of our life that we'd rather not think about. But then we're missing life. We only get one. That's just, we're here. It's happening. It's the time is passing. And if we only feel like we're living when we're happy, we're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, I just had a good thought about, good. When you were just talking, it connected to me with hypnobirthing. In hypnobirthing, one of the word switches that they use, instead of how painful are your contractions, they ask how comfortable are you? On a scale from 1 to 10, how comfortable are you? So it switches the focus from the pain to the parts of your body that are okay, that are comfortable, that are in equilibrium or better. And I think that's a good way of thinking about emotions too, because there are uncomfortable emotions and there are emotions in which we are uncomfortable, but they're not bad emotions. The emotion doesn't have to do with how comfortable we are. Everything that we have learned and experienced and taught contributes to how comfortable we are in that emotion. So yeah, anyway, it just seemed like an interesting parallel.
Yeah, I like
a good
that.
way to switch the focus.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it come into your conversations or your process with yourself?
For me, I think the biggest thing has been to allow myself to feel all the things, to allow myself all the emotions. Because anger, for example, was, and still is, but I've been working on this for a while, so it has gotten better, was a big one that I had just a big red label on, that it was not acceptable, and that like I immediately very harshly judged anyone that was expressing anger, and obviously did the same thing for myself, which is why I have such a strong reaction and judgment in other people, because I do that to myself. That's the only reason we see that in others, because we have that in ourselves. And I just recently, although I've been working on this for a while, like I think in 2016 was the first time my therapist back then brought my attention to it, that I was doing that. I just recently had an epiphany about it again. I don't even remember what the situation was and why I was angry, but I all of a sudden noticed that I was judging myself for being angry and trying to not feel it and get myself out of it, and being disappointed in myself and being angry. I think it was because I was angry at someone, and I was not okay with that. I didn't want to allow myself to be angry at someone. And I noticed, which that's such a big thing, that I noticed it in the moment.
Yeah.
And then I did the steps, and then I was like, well, okay. I actually thought, okay, this is something I'm going to want to teach my children. I think so much about this, and I read so much about this and have such goals around it. Why am I not allowing myself to do that? And I had this big revelation of like, okay, Hannah, let's like give yourself a little hug mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and just let it flow. And I let it flow through me. And I think I screamed in a pillow and hit the pillow and like I expressed it and I allowed it, and then immediately felt better. Because if we block emotions and try not to feel them and therefore don't let them flow, they're going to get stuck in our body.
Yeah, they just sit around.
Yeah. And then they're going to come up in another moment. That's how triggers work. It's something that has been pent up, and it just builds and builds, and you fill this cup and then it flows over. Or a physical symptom shows up to show yourself that you have been repressing something. Yeah, so that was huge for me, allowing myself all of the emotions. And then with that, once I allow myself that, then automatically I will also have more grace in that context with other people.
Yeah.
Which I've also been noticing, and I'm liking it a lot.
That's so cool.
Like I'm having such a better time in like conflicts with other people, because I've been getting better at just giving the other person grace and just letting them be that and not judging them for anything and wanting to tone it down and like, no, okay, you're angry right now. Go ahead. That's okay.
Yeah, as long as everyone's safe, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing the more I just give them that space and let them be and not try to interfere, the less risk there is for the situation not being safe.
Right. I think that depends on your context, but I think all the people you're interacting with, that's probably very true.
Yeah. No, it definitely depends on the context.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think when people feel seen, it's so much easier to move through what you're feeling if you don't get that acknowledgement. And I've noticed this a lot with my partner, right? Like if I don't feel like if he sees what I'm feeling, if I don't feel like he understands correctly what I'm feeling, it's so much harder for me to move. And, in relation to him, it's so much harder for me to move through that.
Yeah, same.
And so the first step obviously is seeing it for myself. And then, when you're in a relationship and when you're an adult and when you have the words, you can express how you're feeling to them. And then as long as they also feel safe and they also feel seen, they're going to see that. And it's this whole like passing back and forth of the safety and the seeing, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I similarly over the past few years have started, and I think, sorry, I'm interrupting myself, but I think this is a thing that's part of a lot of marriage counseling too. All the stuff about I statements and all the stuff about acknowledging the other person before you bring your perspective, right? Because it's...
Ooh, yes. That's a big one. Say that again.
Well, it's the same thing. It's seeing them. It's making sure that they know that they are seen. And that's just as important for adults as it is for children. And sometimes even more so because they have a longer history of not having been seen.
Yeah. Oof. That just reminded me of something else you said. What jumped out at me, and which is why I said repeat that, was to acknowledge them and what they said and what they're feeling before you react, before you bring forth your statement. And that reminded me of, which I think was what your mom shared, what with her kernel, the pause.
Yeah. Oh God, that was so good. That one got me real good.
That is so, and that was also something that has made a big difference in my life, to focus and practice and stretch that pause between something happening and my reaction to it. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah. I think that one is lifelong. Yeah.
How is it for you with your son?
Doing this emotion coaching stuff? Ooh. It's a process. It feels a lot like trial and error to a certain extent.
Because you're not used to it yet, or because you're getting to know him?
Probably both.
Okay.
He's changing a lot right now and always at the moment. But like the thing with the door, right? He gets really upset if the door closes. And I haven't quite figured out the thing, and it's not a thing that you're not trying to fix it, right? But
to understand it?
Yeah. Like what it is about the door closing that he doesn't like. Did he want to go outside? Is it that there was something he was going to investigate and now he can't do that? Is it just a sense of loss that like that those things don't exist anymore because he can't see them anymore? Or is it, did he think something was going to happen and then his expectations were subverted? So, I mean, what I always end up saying is, oh, that's so disappointing. It's frustrating when the door closes and you didn't want it to close, And sometimes if he's really upset, I'll get down on the floor with him and I'll say, oh, I'm here. And I know it's so annoying. It's so frustrating. And usually then after like a cry or three, he'll go crawling around to another part of the room, or he'll go crawling over to the door and climb up on it and touch stuff. And so, yeah, that one feels good. What was I saying the other day? I had a really good thought about this the other day. It was really just brilliant. So sorry I can't share it with you.
I'm sorry we weren't there for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really on you. Yeah, but I think it is easier to do when you know there's a reason. Oh my gosh.
Tell me.
Recently, I listened to Janet Lansbury's podcast pretty regularly. I've talked about it on here before. And she recently had an episode about how our boundaries set our children free. The boundaries we set set our children free.
Yeah.
And it was basically about when a child wants you to do something all the time and they keep asking you to do it or telling you to do it and you do it, and then they do it again, and then it's upsetting, and it's just a whole, it's like a cycle, right? And that you keep getting into it over and over and over again. And how by doing the thing they're asking you to do, you aren't actually filling their need, right? And so this is a part of the like respectful childcare and emotion coaching that's always been a little bit fiddly for me. Like, where does no fit in here, and where do how do boundaries work within this framework, right? Because we're not out here letting our children do whatever they want. And also, though, we want to do it without shame. We want to do it without value judgments. And how does that work, right? And that, like, what's the nitty gritty on that?
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting to hear her talk about these different scenarios, these different people that had written in. And one of them was a woman whose kid wanted her to draw for him all the time. And eventually she realized she didn't want to draw for him anymore. And then she said no. Mm-hmm. And she said it was a boundaries issue. And she said no. And then like the child was upset, and they had a lot of emotions about it. And they, expressed those emotions. They were upset for a while. Yeah. And then they were okay. And then they started drawing themselves. And then they didn't need her to draw for them all the time. So I think recognizing that it doesn't have to be a safety concern. It doesn't have to be something big and important. The reason that you draw a boundary, that you're just allowed to have boundaries.
Yeah.
When I say it like that, it sounds very obvious. But I think with our children, it's hard to recognize that we're allowed to have boundaries. And like my mom said, this transition from infancy to toddlerhood, where before our job was literally to respond to every cry and figure out what the issue was and fix it so that they were no longer upset. Mm-hmm. That was the job. Yeah. And that's not the job anymore, because he gets upset at the door closing, and I can't do anything about that. And I'm not going to, right?
Yeah.
Making that transition, I think, is the challenging part. Like, what do I respond to with a fix, and what do I respond to with seeing? Mm-hmm. And that's why the pause is so big for me right now, because pausing lets me see first in both scenarios.
Yeah.
And then I can see if I need to respond with a need, or if I need to respond with companionship and support rather than something concrete.
In this context, I also like the word "and," which was one of the things I really wanted to point out in the interview with your mom, but there was just so much in there. Yeah. I didn't get to it. But this just reminded me of it. I think this example with the drawing part and with the door are beautiful examples of this, and for me a confirmation of this whole concept. So this example with the woman saying no, she doesn't want to draw anymore for her child. I understand that in the first moment it feels like you're denying them something, and that's bad, quote unquote. And I think in the end, to me it seems it's the contrary. I'm helping the child with that, because with this emotion coaching concept, I want to value their boundaries and their emotions and support them in that. So since we are modeling all the time, what she did with that was model to her child that also her boundaries, just as much as theirs, are valid and need to be respected. And here's where the "and" comes in. I understand that you're upset at this, and that's okay. And I'm here with you. And this is my boundary. Right. And these are my, I am upset about this or whatever. Both things are true. This is my boundary, and it's okay that you're upset about that. Yeah.
Which is incredibly difficult to do with adults, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we understand that our job to a certain extent is to set boundaries for our children, and we still find it difficult to do as adults and with adults.
Yeah, because again, we have been raised differently, and we're now, I think you're in my generation is now learning this other concept.
Yeah, I also think I thought when I started learning about this different way of teaching children, caring for children, I think I thought that I only needed to say no when it was important, like save your no's for when it's important. And important in my head meant safety concern, meant unmovable time constraint meant something external to me. Something external to me and external to the kid. But that's not necessarily the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's something important, inclusive of external importance and also internal needs and boundaries and limits.
Yeah, your boundaries are important.
Right. And I think valuing your boundaries as much as you would value a safety concern is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Such a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Woof.
Well, I can't wait for numerous more episodes with your mom, because I want so many lifetime examples and
I can't wait.
just all the things she can tell us about all the things she knows.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions, let us know. But we've got our own list, so you don't have to if you don't have any.
But feel free to do so.
No, please do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for chatting to me about it. This was a nice, debrief. I like a debrief. And we will talk to you again next week.
Until next week.